Okay. So, okay. Well, welcome to all of you. And today we are going to study about something that's been affecting you your entire existence called time. And it's, when you think about time, it's going on all the time, and we're just not that, we're aware of it in relationship to when we decide to make it important. When something in life says, I need to pay attention to what time it is. But what's interesting is time is kind of existing whether you're aware of it or not, isn't it? It's just around you. So, any of you come up with some ideas about what time actually is?
I did have a thought, since I would love to have my intuition, my ability to intuit situations would make my life much easier. And you only get that through reaching zero. And I guess I felt like if you are an intuitive person or have that gift, that ability, that it's almost like it's proof that time is an illusion, right?
Right.
Because you're reaching out into the future to gain information, or the past that maybe, consciously you wouldn't have access to, but you're going super conscious at that moment, right?
Right. So time really doesn't affect superconsciousness, does it? Once you're in superconscious state, time doesn't exist anymore. That barrier in your consciousness only is related to at the conscious level, the subconscious and the unconscious, in the way that we perceive it. But that doesn't mean time doesn't exist.
That's true.
That you're not perceiving it, It's like, does the sun shine when you don't see it? Yeah. But time is one of those, it's related to, we can think of it in the physical outer world, and we can also think of it in the inner world, because we experience time in both worlds that we experience as a human being. We experience that. How about you, Sid? Did you have any?
Well, in the physical world, it's like a series of experiences, and that's how you mark time, because various things will happen along the way, and then you realize time has passed.
That's correct. And that is very much related to the way the physicists see it, is time is a series of events. And each one of them has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then there's another little capsule of event, and another event, and another event. And one of the reasons we know that this is actually true is when you're dreaming, you have a series of events that are sequenced. That's how you dream. You're aware of the sequences of events. And you know that if you do dream analysis. The very first thing I have people do in dream analysis is to objectify and sequence the events that are happening. Because you'll notice, like, maybe your dream starts and you're at a park and you're playing with kids, and the next thing you know, you're sitting at a table with your father. He's drinking beer and you're having coffee, and the next thing you know, you're on the beach. And you're going, when our conscious mind goes, wait a minute, we can't be leaping from one thing to another. But in reality, the dream state is very significant, because we know that we are manifesting an experience of life as a series of events. There really is no time per se. I'm going to pull up. We're going to scroll back down here. Can everybody see this?
No.
Okay.
I cannot.
Okay.
No.
All right. Let me find out how I'm supposed to share this. Share screen. Let's try that. See if that works. Nope. Can you see it?
No.
No.
All right. Where's the whiteboard? I know she.
And still, I only see you unless like Tina is talking or Megan was talking.
Okay. I got to find
I
it.
don't get everybody.
I'm trying to find where's the whiteboard.
Sydney, if you go up to, do you see view in the corner? Oh, you're on an iPad. Okay. You have to.
No, I'm not on I
No, I am.
Sydney is. If you scroll to the right, it should take you into gallery view, I think.
Nope.
Okay.
Let me try it again. Let me try left.
Yeah, it's one of the scroll ways.
Sharing options. Okay.
Oh, I don't know what I did, but something's there. Oh,
Whoa.
Sorry.
Oh, did I lose you?
No, I did. Okay.
All right.
So-
Now I'm trying to figure out how to get my.
Yeah, Yarrow knows how to do it. I remember we shared the screen out last month.
I know.
I don't know. I can't see it on mine either. A view though, view on, like she said, I see that on the upper right corner.
Let's see. Oh, gallery view, full screen. God,
I know.
these learning curves.
Yeah, usually when the screen share, it'll pull up another window and it says share your screen or whiteboard.
It's
Yeah.
got.
So when you click screen and say, okay, it's not doing anything.
Oh, geez. There is share screen. We just did this. We just went through this yesterday, and I was like, oh, I've got it. No, I don't. I've got to hang on with sex. Yarrow,
Megan,
Yeah.
how can I pull up the whiteboard?
when I hit share content and it shows screen, photos, blah, 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 what should I hit to see everybody?
Oh no, sorry.
Oh,
That's
here we go. Here we go. I got it.
to see everybody. You have to find something that says view, and then you have to click on gallery view.
I got it.
Everybody
I
got
see it now.
Okay. You can see it now?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
cool.
No.
All right. We're going to figure this out, ladies.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to go through this a little bit. So where does time exist? Time exists in space called the universe. This is all based on physics. Okay. And one of the things that I like about physics is proven mathematically. So we know that it's the truth. There's no conjecture about, this man philosophized that it was this, and this person. This is when we're getting into metaphysics. When we get into metaphysics, you're running into opinions, and so we don't get a real clear picture. We get a lot of I think I know what's going on, and this is my opinion. So I like to go to the physicists and hear what they have to say and use that, because the truth of science should be the same as the truth I get metaphysically or I get in a superconscious state of intuition. Those should match up. Okay, so let's look at this. So time exists in space called the universe. Space is a field that responds to the mass of objects within it. Okay, so one of the things we know, it's elastic like a fabric that gives and bends as it responds to objects in it. For example, think of a heavy ball being placed on a sheet. The shape of the sheet will warp around the ball, right? You've seen that, how time, space continuum. You've seen pictures of how it warps around things. Has everybody seen that before?
Yeah.
So time moves slower as the force of gravity gets stronger. So that means time travels more slowly at sea level than in the mountains. And your feet move at a slower time than your head. That is why you trip and fall. Time and space are interrelated. They are one field in the physical plane. And every point in space experiences its own time. There is no unity of time-space field. There is none. Now that's kind of mind-blowing, because you think about time and you think, oh my God, everyone around me is having the same time experience that I'm having. No, they're not. They are not. They are living in their own little time field space bubble. So on the physical plane, another interesting fact is time only flows in one direction due to the second law of thermodynamics, which says heat only flows into cold. Heat never flows into heat. And because this is the only physical law that we know of that only flows in one direction, and that is what establishes the fact that time moves in one direction. We cannot time travel back. It only goes one direction. So if we were looking at the hourglass here, we see there's sand that hasn't traveled yet through now, because this point right here would be now. And that which has already gone through is the past. So the future, or everything that's in potentia, only flows through the now to become the past.
Can we ask questions
Absolutely.
along the way?
Yes, let's talk about
I already have like 5. Well, the first was, there's no unity in the time-space field. So I was laughing this morning thinking, oh, this workshop on time is when the daylight savings time switched. And I talk to a friend every week on Sunday who lives in Arizona, and they don't do daylight savings. So I guess, like, if we're not having the same experience of time, but yet we are measuring by a clock, right? And I say, okay, I have my call with you at 10 a.m. And so we're just experiencing it different, but we're agreeing on what 10 a.m. is because of the way it's being measured? Yes.
You're deciding that you're going to meet up each in your own little bubble at a particular point in time that's totally related. You're making the choice to meet up. And we're going to talk about the time zone difference and how that all came about. But right now, I want you to notice your bubble of time. Did you have to make an adjustment then?
Yeah. Because it was like, I'm springing forward, so now will be an hour difference.
Right. But did it affect her bubble?
No.
And there is no unity between the two of you. You both she made the choice not to change the time. And because of where you live, the space in which you live, you have to make an adjustment to what you call the time of day. But it's totally relative.
So, and then the other question I have was, I'm just not following how the second law of thermodynamics, I definitely know the heat flows into cold, but how that relates to time only going into one direction.
Well, thermodynamics is the flow of what? What do you know?
Is it energy?
No, it's the flow. It's the flow of heat agitation.
So it's like molecules that are shaking, basically going into ones that are slower.
Right, and the way so a molecule doesn't, if it's agitated, it doesn't flow towards molecules that are more agitated.
Oh.
It goes towards the molecules that aren't agitated. So let me go down one more line here. The difference between the past and the future. The past has lower entropy or chaos than the future. That is why we experience the past and future as different states. In the past, we know what happened. We don't know what will happen in the future, even though its trajectory is already established by the past in the moment called now. So when you think of the past, because you already know what happened, the chaos it's more organized, isn't it? Like you can tell me right now what happened yesterday in your life, right? You can go through the sequences. Can you tell me what the sequences are of how today is going to unfold from this point forward?
No.
No, why not?
But that makes it more confusing because it's like chaos is going to be more like this, right? So time's moving towards the chaos.
No, time is the flow of energy from one energetic state into a peaceful state. What's happening here? What's happening right here on the drawing? Do you see where's the movement? The only place you've got the movement, gravity's pulling that sand down. So which of these two parts of the sand are more active? The one that's coming down through or the one that's already settled?
The one that's going down through.
That's the one that has more energy, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. This is experiencing energy. So it has, the molecules are more energetic, and so they have more energy, so they have more chaos. Once they fall, how strong is chaos in the sand that has settled?
There's
Not very.
No, it's not moving. So if it's not moving, then it has low entropy. That means it has, because entropy, a lot of people don't know it, but the universe is based on chaos. It's based on entropy. And so when you're thinking about the future and you go, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Of course you don't know what's going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. And you can do all the thinking about the now that you want to do. But what happens if you're intuitive and you know what's coming down through now? Because you've plotted that in your mind. You've set intentions about what you want to have happen. What happens when it passes through the now? It manifests.
Yeah.
Here
And
we
then-
go.
And then you're not experiencing as much resistance, right?
Right. Hang
I
on.
think I was thinking of time flowing from towards the future, but so in this model, time is flowing the other direction into the past.
No. It's flowing. It's flowing from, does it flow from the past into the future? Jesus, shut up. God.
Maybe it's when you're hitting that now moment and you're allowed to just exist in that specific time. Then, but if you're living in the past or the future, it could.
Where do you experience? Look at this. There is no common universal time, only unique light cones of events. Your cone consists of your past and your future. And where they intersect is your now. Okay? So this is your past. Time, we think, we've been taught that time flows from the past into the future, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. I hate to break it to you, but what it does is the future comes from a state of potentia and flows through now to become the past. Now, if you've done some of my workshops, do you want a little further to know about this? Go to the Being One in the Spirit video 5, Manifesting Intention. And in that video, I spent about 20 minutes talking about how do we manifest something. If you've got this all these ideas floating around in the future, right? Because you don't know what's going to be. You don't know which one's going to travel through the now and actually manifest. Because the point of manifestation is actually has to happen on the physical level, right? And it has to be something that you thought of, right? So it was in a potential state as a thought. And then it's the one that came down the funnel. And as soon as it came down the funnel, all of a sudden, it was your reality. but it also now becomes part of your past because it's settled. Let's use an example.
I have a question.
Well, let me finish this first.
Okay.
If, let's say you wanted to be in love, okay, and you think that you're in love with somebody, and yet, so that's the part of the thoughts that are flowing around in the future, okay, in this upper portion of the cone, the time cone. And then all of a sudden they do something that shatters your perspective of what that experience is going to be. And where that happens is in the now. So what happens to the idea that this was the perfect love situation? It's not what collapsed out of potentia into reality. What collapsed was that person isn't somebody that you're going to be with. And so now that becomes your reality. That becomes your past, right? So when you're sitting there right now, what are some options you have about what you could do this afternoon?
Work.
Work? Okay,
Yeah.
work. Okay. Anything else? What's another thing you could do?
Be super lazy and do
Could be,
nothing.
right?
Yeah, or meditate.
Walk outside.
Hi, Susan.
Hey, how are you?
Good. This is Susan Bassmagen from Salt Lake. And
Can you
Susan's
see me?
been with me since the 80s. So,
Well, later, no, about 1990.
90. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't move here till 89.
Okay. And Sydney, can you fix your picture? I mean, all I can see your face is cut off. How you're
Oh. I can't see. All I can see is you. Is that
Yeah,
better?
same here.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
much better.
You look like a real person. Instead of just like the eyes. Okay, so we're talking about the fact that time exists basically as light cones, and it's sequences of events, and each event is unique, and it all only happens in your light cone, not anybody else's. So where we think that time is universal, it is not universal. And the thing is when you recognize it's not universal, you recognize you can have some control over time, your time, what is going on in your life. So we were just talking about what are your possibilities today? Celestina said, well, I can work, I can be lazy and watch a movie. Interesting that you had to put a negative on that.
Oops.
Did you really? I mean, I enjoy watching movies. Well, I'm not going to get into a number on myself about it. What else could you? You could have something to eat, right?
Take a walk.
You could take a walk, right? You could go sit outside on the stair, just let the sunshine hit you. So how do we know which one's going to happen in your little light cone? What's going to happen for you? Whatever you choose.
Whatever you choose.
Whatever you choose. And as soon as you choose it, you cause it to collapse down into the now, which is right here in the physical realm of the space-time continuum. And what happens is you decide you're going to go sit outside and enjoy the sunshine. So what do? You go out and sit down in the sunshine. So that's already been decided. So that reality that you just chose now is part of what you're experiencing. But then you decide you're hungry and you're going to watch a movie. So you go in the house. So now what happens to that event when you sat on the stairs? It settles into the past. And now what becomes your now? I'm going to get some to eat. And then that settles into the past. And then you say, well, I want to watch a movie. So you pick a movie, and then that layer settles into the past. And then you decide, maybe I should get some work done. So next, work. The idea of work, you go to your desk and you start doing transcription, and that is what happens in your physical time-space continuum. You work, and then that settles, and then you go to bed, and that settles, and then you sleep, right? Have you ever looked at time that way?
No, it's interesting.
Yeah, so now is the only point where choice is made. So whatever you choose is going to determine your future. Do you think that all these other things are just determining what's going to happen to you? You know, it's what somebody did, it's what they said, you know, it's my boss, you know, that I'm having a hard time with, you know, they're determining how I feel. No, they're not. They're not. They're not in your space. You are choosing to make the way that you feel about them important. And that's why that's what collapses into your past. You don't like where you're at, then you have to make different choices, right? So what happens when we meditate?
Can I ask my question now?
Oh, yes, honey, go ahead.
If we go back to the cones,
Yep.
okay, so if the future is all of my potential options that I am aware of, but what happens if there are options I'm not aware of? Say like a universal pandemic. Yeah, again, I get to make my choices, but that wasn't even on my mind that could happen. I mean, it's not something that I was consciously aware of.
Yes, you were, because you just told me you were in a pandemic. You knew that was something that needed to come into your thought field. I need to make my choices based on awareness that I'm in a pandemic. And your awareness of the fact you're in a pandemic made you take that into consideration when you were considering what you were going to do.
That's true.
What about people that are living out in the wilderness and they don't have contact with anybody? Think they're having a pandemic?
No.
No. And who is being affected by the pandemic? Only people who choose to be aware of it. What about the people that don't want to wear masks? They're
Oh.
making a choice,
Yeah.
right? That's their choice, that there is no pandemic. And then what happens if that's how they're living and there's no pandemic? And the reality is that there really is a pandemic when it gets to the physical plane of reality. And they get sick and they die.
So are all things that are in the potential cone, you're consciously aware of all of them? Or
No,
there are things
most
in
of it, the only thing you're aware of what's inside your bubble, what happens to float into your world. Everything else is undefined in the universe. Unless you think about it, unless you contemplate it, unless it's part of the way you look at the world, scientists consider it undefined. Do you know in mathematics when we do undefined? Does anybody remember that?
No, that's a long time.
No,
Oh, okay. Well, there's some what it doesn't exist. That's science's way of saying it doesn't exist because it's not relevant to the experience that I'm having. Right? So here, look at this hypersurface of the present. So this is everything else that's going on in the world, in the universe right now. The only point that you are experiencing is right here at the now. Do you think your mom or dad or your friends are having the same experience right now that you are? No.
And they
No.
probably don't experience time the same way that I think that I'm experiencing it. I know, like when you're with someone that doesn't want to show up on time, they think it's more fluid than I do.
Right, but what's interesting is time basically is it a flow? They're in their world, they live in a different cone.
Definitely.
And
Even my
that's why-
dog has that going on. My dog, like, he knows when Sunday hits and he's standing at alert for at least an hour,
Right.
or, and so it is interesting to think of other people having a different cone.
Well,
So,
when you are interacting with other people, what do you notice? Do they think about everything the same way you do?
oh, definitely not.
No, you could be in the same situation and find it out. Somebody has a completely different interpretation of the same book, of the same experience. And this is why, because we only exist in our own light cone, and it's the only place you exist.
But
And
that's
they
our
only
own.
exist in theirs. So what we can think of is the universe is made up, in as far as the world around us, are these 7 billion light cones that are experiencing the hypersurface of the present moment. And maybe somebody's is over here on the edge, maybe your husband's is over here, maybe your dog's is over here, maybe the birds is over here. So you're not, this idea that we're all in this together. No, you're in this alone, making choices. And you can change your choices by changing what's potential for you. And that happens by opening your mind up and letting yourself have experiences and awareness that allows you to see the bigger picture, right? So what happens now? Let's just talk about this. What's the difference? What happens to when you meditate?
No.
Time disappears, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because the time-space continuum does not exist on the subtle or astral plane. It doesn't exist on the mind itself, exists only on the subtle plane, so it has no time. So when you're meditating, where are you going? To your inner world. So there is no time there. The only place you experience the time cone is in your outer world and in your memories. But even when you think about your memories, do you put a time frame on them, or are they just a sequence of events and feelings? That's all they are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it isn't like when you take a picture, like you've got a camera running and there's a little thing over in the corner that says, oh, it's 2:34 p.m. when this memory was created, 2:40 p.m., right? So we don't experience, we've been told that time is something that is sequential in the way it all flows from one event to another event, and it can do that. But when you're meditating, there is no time because you're only in the subtle plane. You're not on the physical plane. Where is your mind? When you're meditating, you're not thinking about the music going on. When you really meditate, you don't care who's sitting next to you. You don't care what the temperature of the room is, because time and space drop away. They drop out of your frame of reference. So what happens if we were looking here? Okay, I came into the room. I decided I'm going to sit down. I'm going to meditate. So I do my preparation, right? And then I finally sit. And I'm right at the now, and all of a sudden I single focus the mind, right, Anya, or breath, and what happens? There's an expansion of thought, of mind that happens in my future, right? And that starts to come down through my now, and next thing I know, I don't have a body. I'm not sitting in a room. I'm in the space of awareness that I call superconsciousness. Now, what happens when you come out of superconsciousness? You start remembering, okay, you bring the awareness back to the breath. So here you were in this expanded state and not focused on thought. And when there is no thought, there is no time. You become timeless. Okay, so in this timeless state, all of a sudden, the music shifts, or the body starts to feel a little funny. And so that thought causes your mind to collapse, and it causes you to want to move. So you come to the present moment, you move the body, consciousness keeps collapsing because now you've gone from being super conscious to being conscious, right? And so you bring yourself out of meditation. And then when you think about what you've been through today, you think, wow, I went to a really nice space today, but that space was in the past. Right? But what if I am able, now when we're super conscious, and that's the next level, is time disappears when you, since expanded awareness is not limited by time and space, and you continuously living super consciously. Wow, that was a funny looking session. I don't know what
We're
I was
following
having some sort of an experience there. Anyway, what happens if I don't let my mind collapse when I come to the now, and I keep super conscious, and while I take on awareness of the hyper super space of the present moment? Now I'm doing super conscious living, right?
Yeah.
Because what is my awareness of? The whole thing. So
Everything.
someone who becomes cosmically conscious, their awareness is of all that is at this single point of now. That's what separates them from people, because most people only have one little event, or I meditate for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, and then that passes, and now I'm back to letting my ego coming in and telling me how I'm supposed to be acting, or this person called and made me mad, and so now I'm having an emotion that's taken over. So now I'm going to let that filter through my now. And guess what? I forgot to remember how to be super conscious. I was in that state, and I can go back to that state, but I can't go back into that state. I have to decide I want to sit and meditate again. And I have to go back through the process of bringing that state of awareness back to the now. So this is why controlling your mind is so vital. Your ability to concentrate is so vital to your spiritual awareness and to your spiritual growth. Okay. What happens when you're dreaming? Time disappears when you are dreaming because you are only experiencing yourself existing on the subtle plane in your mind. When you analyze your dreams, you will notice that one dream consists of a series of cones or events that are self-contained and in a sequence with other cones. Each cone contains its own thought or message. Your dream is broken down into a series of events that are either linear or cyclic in nature. So one of the things we know is there's only two patterns that we really experience what's going on in our outer world. And we experience either linear time or cyclic time. So linear time says that the event goes from one event to a brand new event to a brand new event to a brand new event. Cyclic time says what? I get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I get a drink of water, I brush my teeth, I have my breakfast, I go to work, I have lunch, blah, blah, blah. I come home, I go to bed, and I get up the next day and do exactly the same thing, right? So what's happening is you're repeating the pattern. So time can happen in two ways. You can either be moving into new experiences, or you can be repeating the past. So when you repeat the past, you go from one cone to the next cone to the next one in like a circle, right? If it's linear, you go, oh, I'm gonna do this, and now I'm gonna go do this. I've never done it before. I'm gonna do something else new. I'm gonna do something else new, right? So now I'm having a linear experience. What if I get up in the morning and I decide I'm gonna jog first thing, right? So I get up, and next thing I know, I'm having a linear experience in the hyperstructure of the present moment. So I made a change. I made a choice, didn't I? I made a different choice. And when I make a different choice than what I've made from the past, what happens to the cycle? Disappears.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If you don't get them to do the same thing every day,
There's no cycle.
there is no cycle. So when people say, well, I'm stuck in a cycle, it's like, well, that's because you choose to be stuck in a cycle. You could choose to get up and do something different. You could choose, but do you see how much that puts so much responsibility on choice? Interesting enough, Amit Goswami, he was a gentleman, he's a quantum physicist, and I brought him to Salt Lake back in the 90s and to do a workshop on quantum physics and death and reincarnation. But he wrote a book called Self-Aware Universe, right? So in that book, what he talks about, he says, I am choice, therefore I am. I make choice, therefore I am. Where Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And Amat says, thinking's not good enough. It's what you're choosing that's got to happen. And the reason we know that now is our perception of the world due to quantum physics is so different than what we were taught according to Newton and all the people that came before the 20th century.
So
Okay.
can you experience the cyclic and the linear at the same time? Like I'm thinking of, you're going to be experiencing the cyclic nature of the sun is rising and the sun is setting, but you can choose throughout the day to not do the same cycle of your day, but you're still experiencing the cycle of the moon and sun.
Right. So is the outer world, if you're aware of the fact that the sun and moon, that the sun travels in a cycle, then it's part of your mind, isn't it? It's part of what frames your mind. So does that affect your choice?
Mm-hmm.
If it affects your choice, then you can make a linear choice. Even though, because who's really experiencing the night and the day? The planet, the sun is, and the moon or the earth. You're interpreting it to be part of your event, right? So you absolutely can experience linear time and cyclic time all the time. They're going on all the time. Like what happens to day and night when you die? For you, it stops. For your consciousness, it stops. Does it stop for everybody else?
No.
Probably not.
No, it still goes on. I mean, the planet's been around billions of years. Okay, let's go to this other. We're going to look at time now, what it is. So we know it can be linear or cyclic. Okay, so I've gone through the history of how time has emerged. In the outer world, we experience the passage of change on my physical plane. Now you experience it, we females, as a menstrual cycle. We experience it in society as rites of passage, birth and death, marriage. In the inner world, we experience the passing of change on my subtle plane. And I can have a mystical experience, which tells me that time, there's been a shift in my perception of the world. I can have emotional growth, which means that something's changed within me. I've grown up. Or I can have intellectual growth, right? What about spiritual growth? How much different are your spiritual experiences now than when you first started to study with me.
Wonderful.
What's the difference?
You recognize them. They
Yeah.
were there before, but you recognize them.
Right. So your perception of them is different, right? Because you are recognizing something's changed, right? So in nature, we have diurnal rhythms, diurnal meaning day, rhythms of living organisms. This is called day and night. And this is what you're talking about, Megan. Those day and night cycles that are going on in nature affect chemical, hormone, neurons, and molecular body system cycles. Because every thing that the body does has a cycle to it, doesn't it? And it cycles whether you're thinking about it or not. I mean, if we had to think about all the cycles that we're involved in, we would be going crazy. It would be too much. So we have what we call blurred vision. And blurred vision says that I can only be aware of so many things at one time. And so because of that, I can't be totally aware of everything that is occurring at one time. But it doesn't mean that it's not happening because I'm not aware of it. It is going on. So we look at astronomical cycles, day and night, the week, the month, the year, the decade, the score, the century, the millennium, right? So these are all ways that we have defined what is going on in our outer world. That has nothing to do, like when we have a different birthday, when we honor the fact that we have a birthday. Well, is having your birthday, is that linear or cyclic?
It's both.
It's both. It's both, isn't it? Because it comes once a year. You can plan on it, but each birthday is unique, isn't it? So it's a linear experience in your mind, but is it a linear experience in the outer world? No, it's cyclic in the outer world, but in your mind, it's linear, right? You don't think the same way right now in your birthday you're having now that you thought 10 years ago. I hope not. Right?
No.
Right. And so what we begin to realize is, and it's the point that you made, Megan, is we can have linear and cyclic experiences in my own bubble all the time. But I need to recognize what is cyclic and what is linear. If I'm stuck in a rut in my mind, what I'm doing is letting the now just keep repeating what it's been doing. And if I'm happy with that, that's great. But if I'm not happy with what's happening in my now, I need to move. I need to make some changes, right? How do you get unstuck? What is depression? Single focusing on how you feel for a long period of time and picking out what you don't like. That's what depression is, right? Well, what if you do it long enough? Then it becomes a chemical imbalance in the brain. So now you have to go get drugs, right? Now, what if you changed? What if you changed where you were putting your focus, and instead of thinking about what you didn't like about your life, you decided to deep breathe and do a little yoga and go for a walk and go out and lay down on the ground and look up at the clouds? What happens to your cycle of depression?
You break the cycle.
It's not there anymore. It disappeared because you're not giving it's not there anymore. So what happens to the chemistry in the brain?
You don't need medication, right?
Right. You literally can get yourself to move away from that chemical, the body producing the same chemical that it has produced, because you change the way that you think, right? This is why yoga and meditation are so powerful, because they can change us chemically, hormonally, neuronally, and molecularly, right? How long do you have the same body? How long does the body, how long does it take before it's replaced? Every cell in the body is replaced.
7 years?
7 years.
Okay, so you don't like how your body feels right now, what are you going to do about it? You can bitch and moan about it, just don't like the way it feels. Are you going to do things differently so that you have a different body in 7 years?
Just differently.
Okay. Now that's what I call making choices that are good for yourself, right? Now, what if you've got something going on with the body that is causing deterioration? Or you have cancer? What happens if you don't change the way that you think? What's going to happen to the cancer? The cancer showed up, part of it, because of the way that you think, right? Or the way that you eat, or what you've exposed yourself to, or it could be genetic. There could be a genetic tendency towards it. And as long as you let that be what rules what you do, the cancer will remain. And it, by its nature, it has its own way of functioning, right? And so its tendency will take you to a place where it can't change anymore. It's already changed you so much that you've reached a point of what we call equilibrium, homeostasis, and you die, right? See, most of the time we think of, I want to reach perfect balance. Life is about working towards perfect balance in the physical body. If you ever reach it, you're going to die. It's like, because there is no exchange of energy anymore. So what is death? Lack of change, right? Did you ever think of death that way? Guess what? You don't have any more thoughts. You can't change your mind anymore, right? Your opportunity to change your mind is already gone, right? So look at the length of orbits that are going on all the time. The moon around the earth around the sun. Next Sunday, we have the spring equinox and the solstices. So ancient man noticed these cycles, and what they noticed was they counted the days between events. That's how they kept track of time. So in metaphysics and in paganism, how did we know when the equinox was going to be at a certain point? How did they know in ancient times?
Well, the shadows cast from stones, or
Yes, at a particular point on the planet, right? So in Egypt, when did they know the Nile was going to flood? Because the sun would rise right between these two stones that they had erected. And it did it every year. And they knew that on that day, that was the beginning of spring, and that's when the Nile was going to start flooding. What about Stonehenge?
that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, those are all astronomical. Those are astronomical. Think about the Incas. Their temples, everything was astronomically set on the planet at certain positions, so that some light or something would happen at a particular day. And that told the people that it was time to plant the crops, or it was the time to gather in the crops, or there was the beginning of winter, right? So ancient civilization, they were aware of time, and the way they defined it was by counting the days. How do you think children do it? Little kids. They have to learn, right? What's the difference between Sunday? Even your dog, Celestina, knows what
Exactly.
Sunday is every 7 days. The animal knows that,
Yeah,
right? Isn't that amazing, though?
it really is. Oh, and 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
He knows 5 o'clock.
And he knows 5 o'clock in the day, right?
Yeah.
So we become aware that on the physical level, the consciousness of animals is aware of this cyclic time and this diurnal rhythms that are going on. What about, we also, as civilizations developed, we became aware of ages, right? So we have the Stone Age, we have the Copper Age, the what's the other one? Huh?
Bronze.
The Bronze Age, right? So when we look back at the history of man, we talk about ages. And so ages line up, or they're considered light cones of experience that are all related to one another, right? Right? So the Bronze Age had its beginning, it had its middle, and then it had its end. How do we know when it ended? Because the events that were happening changed. Right? How do you know when a change has happened in your life?
Ooh, yeah.
As the events in your life have changed. How did you know you were getting divorced, Celestina?
Oh,
Did
it was
your life change?
drastically, but it was every cell in my body knew everything.
Yep.
There was no questioning it.
That's
So,
right. Right. So
and sometimes I'll look back and I'll think, what it would be like if I didn't change it. And it feels so foreign to me right now. Like I couldn't even imagine being in that cone.
yeah,
You know?
in that space again, huh?
Yeah.
You're just grateful that you move forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What about dynasties? We
Mhm.
named the dynasties. Who was ever the king? Look at China, the Tang dynasty, the Qin dynasty, so, or the wars. The wars is another thing that ancient civilization,
Defined.
that was used to define experiences. And so there is astronomy and astrology, and they used to just be considered the same thing. And if you want to learn more about that, you can watch in my astrology course on Tier 3 on Patreon. The first lecture is all about the history of civilization and astronomy and astrology. And then we have liturgical calendars based on religious events. That's established as cyclic time, right? What's our next religious holiday coming up?
Easter.
Easter, right? And then what happened?
Uh,
Not religious, but just what's the next one that happened?
Is that
Then
Memorial Day?
Day.
Memorial Day, right? And then what?
Oh, 4th
Fourth
of
of
July.
July.
Okay. And do you see each one of them? They have a different significance, right? But who put the significance on them?
We are government.
Man, you did. Your society that you live in did, yeah. And then we notice with agrarian societies that they were very aware of crop cycles, moon cycles, and sun cycles, weren't they? Right. So those affected them. And how many of you garden?
Trying.
Okay, but
Better than me.
I let my dog in.
I know I have to get that done.
So if you garden, then you're going to be very aware of the cycles. The moon cycle, we just started into a new moon cycle yesterday. So I went out and I got my peas planted. I'm getting my peas and my spinach and arugula and lettuce will all go in here in the next couple of days because everything that grows above ground likes to go in the ground between new moon and the waxing moon until we get to full moon. And then all the plants that like to grow underground, like carrots, turnips and stuff, we plant those from the full moon to the waning moon till we reach new moon because they do better because of that. So, and then we noticed there was trade and merchant societies. That meant there were seasons, and travel between societies really started to develop. So why would seasons affect trade?
The weather. Maybe.
Weather, yeah. Availability of merchandise to sell. But if you're a wheat farmer or you're let's say, and let's say there are certain bazaars that are held at certain times, you have to get there by a certain time, don't you? Yeah, so you'd have to count the days on the Silk Road, right, to get your silk from China into Constantinople, right?
Wow.
So interesting during that time. Aristotle, he is the first one that we know of in Western society to define what time is. And he would live between 384 to 322 BCE. And he said, time is the measurement of change. If nothing changes, no time passes. This way of thinking is what created the concept of when. This is what made when important. So I think that's an interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it wasn't in the Middle Ages, in the 1400s, they built town clocks, right? To be by the churches. And so that established time for the towns and the surrounding areas. But if you traveled too far, the time wouldn't make much sense, right? So in the Middle Ages, how did travelers, if they were talking about, I'm going on a trip, what would they say? I'm going to be gone for 10 days. That's as close as I can give you, right? Or I will arrive, like you need me to work, work for you. I will be there a little after sunrise, right? Because they didn't have time the same way we had it. Then we went through the Enlightenment period with Rene Descartes, and he came along and he said, the nature is just a mechanical object. And so because it's mechanical, it has its own rhythms. And so everything in the world can be looked at from that standpoint. And so what happened is the more metaphysical, spiritual side of the way man thought in Western society took a back seat to science. And this was a huge shift. That's why they call it enlightenment. I call it the period when we went into greater darkness, because there was people didn't think of the more metaphysical or intuitive side or the spiritual side of us to be so important. But some people did, including Isaac Newton, who lived in the 1600s. He was a scientist and an astrologer. Did you know that?
No.
He practiced astrology.
Oh, wow.
So he was a metaphysician as well as a scientist. And I think it's important to know that, because he doesn't take what he picked up on intuitively or what he sensed about life to be not important. He thought it was very important. But his major contribution in his the main book that he wrote is called, he introduced the concept of proper time, which is a scientific time concept, which says time is not dependent on external events or change in surroundings. So when in mathematics, they use the symbol t, a little t. And if I'm going to figure out like how long it's going to take me to get from, Pocatello to Idaho Falls, and I know it's 40 miles and I'm going 70 miles an hour, then I can plug that information into a formula and I can figure out how long it's going to take me, how much time is going to pass, right? So that's what we call proper time. And they still use proper time in mathematics, at least in Newtonian physics, not in all. Interesting enough, in the 1800s, which is, this is when we had the railroad starting, right? So the railroad was traveling through much faster than humans had ever traveled. And so what happens is, how are you going to tell people what time to be at the train station? Because everybody's in their own bubble. Chicago has their own bubble. New York has their own bubble. San Francisco has their own bubble. So they had to create time zones. This is when time zones came into place in the United States because of the railroad, and then also because of the telegraph. And then the rest of the world adopted it. So where is the beginning of time? It's an arbitrary point on the planet. Anybody know?
The Big Bang.
Is
No,
that
no.
the Greenwich?
Yes, Greenwich, England.
Oh.
Yes, and there's an observatory there, And that's 0 degrees. That's the beginning of the time. Time on the planet begins and ends at Greenwich, England.
Ah,
And is it arbitrary? Absolutely. But they had to do something, right?
Yeah.
And then in the late 1800s, Albert Einstein was born, and he's what we call a theoretical physicist. So a theoretical physicist, instead of running experiments, they think about things. And everything that they think about, that's where the experiment takes place. Okay, so he's theoretical. Well, interesting enough, his first job, he got a job at the Swiss patent office, and he was working with time, clocks, patents for clocks. So he was thinking about time all the time. And now we wonder, why did he come up with the theories about time? He published his theories about time in 1905. He said time for all objects is relative to the speed of causality. So that's what we call relative time, the theory of relativity. So how fast is something moving? The only way I can know how fast it's moving is in relationship to something else, right? And then he also came up with a general statement. This is the general statement of relativity. Time is the indefinite, continued progress of existence and events that occur in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present.
Read that again.
Well, I'll read it again. Time is the indefinite, continued progress of existence and events that occur in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present. So
Apparently irreversible.
it is irreversible, isn't it? And so let's take that and think here. So where does the past come from? If we're talking about the past, which way do you go when we're looking at the light come?
from the now.
You have to go from the now to that which has already been, right? So what is the future?
Point of now to.
It's all the potential of what can happen. You don't know what's going to happen, do you?
Does the future have a lot to do with like quantum mechanics too, or quantum physics?
Well, that's a whole nother ball game, and I'm not going to touch that one.
Okay, okay.
We've only got a few minutes left.
Never mind.
I have to go on I've been studying quantum physics for about 12 years now, and this kind of stuff. And the reason I want to expose you to it is it's going to rattle your way you think about what you're experiencing. And you're going to understand how important it is to focus in the moment on what is really going on, because it's the only place that you can make change. And that is real in your mind, and it is real in your physical reality. If you have bad health, do something about it. Don't put it off. Do something about it now. You got funky relationships, do something about it. Do something about it now. Because if you miss every moment that you miss, that the sand of time settles into the past. It's a moment you've missed. I almost died, 8 years ago. You think when I was going through that experience, what do you think I was thinking about? I was watching my body have an experience. My mind was not in, my mind was watching what was happening to my body. Shh.
So it wasn't in the past or anything. It wasn't stuck in the past like a lot of people go.
No, in fact, it had disengaged. It had disengaged from the physical realm. And so I had to bring my mind back in through the throat chakra back into the physical body and reconnect the body and mind. That's what you call a near-death experience, when there's a disconnect and you're watching yourself living, but I know how to be in an altered state enough. I was able to bring myself back through the throat chakra, bring my consciousness back into my body. And so when it came back in, I lifted up my head and I winked at my kids, and they knew I was back. Right? And then started the process of having to live again. And do you think things were in a state of balance? They were not. And
Mhm.
I was in ICU for a week. So where do you think I put my mind? In that now moment. In that now moment, I focused on my yoga body. And that kept me focused on responding to what the body needed in the moment and giving the body what it needed. Because my mind didn't need to be engaged in the fact that you almost died. Because what would have that done? What good would that have done me?
No,
None.
Do you think I got better? I was within 2 years, I went through 3 near-death experiences within a 4-month time period, and I was back teaching yoga in 2 years.
That's amazing.
So where do you think I put my mind?
Well,
I'm telling you, the ancient yogis knew something. They knew what I'm talking about. And I'm trying to show you that people have known this and been exposed to this for a long time, but it's real. A lot of people think yoga's, it's foofy, or meditation's foofy. There is nothing foofy about it. It is real. And that's one of the reasons, if you have a little more knowledge about the scientific aspect of astrology, people say astrology doesn't work. And it's like, you don't have enough knowledge to know how incredibly accurate it is. You're speaking as a fool. If you spent 50 years like I have, you would understand. You are living in a world that is dynamically a reflection of these cyclic patterns. And if you're aware of those cyclic patterns, you can predict. And why were you born at a particular point in time on the planet at a certain hour? Do you see? That's just like Greenwich. It's a snapshot in time when you entered into the realm of being in a physical body with consciousness. That's what your natal chart is showing you. It's just a snapshot. And then what happened? You went on a linear journey. You're still on it. You're going to be on that linear journey till you die, right? So your body's going through the linear journey. What is your mind doing? Is it being linear or is it being cyclic?
both.
Right. So when you have problems, what are you doing with your problems? Just solving them? Or are you just feeling sorry for yourself?
Yeah, I think you're just staying in that, for me anyway, staying in that those past moments.
Well, what's that going to do for you?
Nothing.
Well, it must be doing something because you keep doing it. What's the attraction?
I
What's
don't
the
know.
attraction? It's predictable.
Oh, I get it.
It's predictable. So I know what's going to happen. So I'm going to keep doing the same thing. And then I can know what my future is. How many people do you think live their life that way? Most.
A lot.
Are you one of them? What happens to you when you are living that way? What happens to your body?
Depressing.
It is depressing. So who can change it?
Well, I'm the only one that can change that.
And why? Because the only place you live, dear, is in your own light cone of events.
Right.
That's it. Nobody can change it for you. I could give you information and give you ideas about how you could change things, but if you do not initiate those as action in the physical realm, using the gunas, those natural law, those forces of nature, and you don't hold your mind to what it is you want to experience, And when the desire comes up to do something that's not good for you, you discipline yourself and say, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do something new. Wow, I just made a linear choice. Good for me. How many of you have ever, like, you drink or you smoke or something, you're addicted to chocolate or food? How do you ever break the cycle? You have to make a different choice over and over and over again until that new pattern comes into play. And once you make that, what happens? I thought yesterday I'd been out working in the yard, and I used to sit down afterward and have something to drink and have a cigarette. And I thought, God, a cigarette sounds so good right now. And I was like, oh yeah, you quit smoking. Oh, okay, I guess we're not doing that. But the memory came up, and I was like, wow. Yeah, because I really loved, I used to smoke with Celestina's mom, and we would do clean house together, and she helped me out with Jair when he was growing up, and so we would work for a while around the house, and then we'd sit down and have something to drink and have a cigarette, and that was our pattern. But she eventually died of lung cancer, and so that pretty well tells you better not be smoking, because it can kill you. But you know what? Anything could kill us. But it wasn't the smoking so much that killed her. It was an emotional attachment to a past that she would not let go of. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling her, if you will let go of this and move forward, you will heal. And she wouldn't do it. And she was gone in 6 months. So anyway, but she was a sweetie, and we still love her. Don't we, Celestina?
Yes, we do.
She's one of my favorites in my book and in Sydney's book. Yep.
I have a question on memories, because I feel like I have terrible memory, but I don't worry. Like, I'm like, well, whatever. Like, my tendency is more towards, I've heard like depression's more about focusing on the past, where anxiety is more about looking forward to the future. So that's where I feel like my issue is. But does it matter if you don't have, like, do you need to have good memory for any reason, or it's kind of like whatever? I guess that helps me be more in the present, because I'm only on the upper cone.
Let's get some opinions on that.
Well, if I had better memory, I would have been to class on time.
Okay.
I mean, I had it on my calendar and everything. I didn't forget the time change, but somehow in my mind, when I was doing my work this morning, in my mind, it started at 12:30.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's like I was on my own time path.
Okay. And so how did that sync up?
Well, it was when I came at 12:25, I thought, oh gosh, this has already started.
Yeah. So
and I remembered, yes, it started at noon. And I was meditating before. I was
you were in your own little bubble, weren't you?
I was in my own
That's what I'm trying to tell you. We all live in our own little bubbles. So if you want to be on time, you got to be aware of the apparent reality of what's going on around you, and then sync up with that. That's a good example.
I apologize.
No, that's fine, sweetie. No problem. What about memories for you, Sid?
Well, I'm sort of with Megan, because I was talking to a friend last night, and we had gone to Europe many years ago, and we had both shared memories, and then things we had done together I had no memory of at all.
Right.
And they were big, it wasn't just insignificant.
Well, it was to you. Right. You didn't, it wasn't significant enough for your gray matter to record it.
Yeah. It didn't.
No.
It did not.
And yet you were you were on the same trip.
Yeah.
At the same time. But it didn't really matter, did it?
Nope. It did not.
Nope. How about you?
Like every call with my best friend, like I've best friend since 2nd grade. She has all these, and I'm like, I don't remember that at all.
And it doesn't. You know what? Who cares? Who cares? Probably you may have something in your astrological chart that you're more focused on the future and where you're going, and not focused on. Some people love to reminisce and live in the past, or the water signs. You know, you're an earth sign. You're pretty focused in what's going on right now, aren't you? And Aries moon
Yeah, in the 12th house, the
in
moon's in the
12th house. So you think you're going to be focused? What's your ascendant?
Aries.
Well, you think
Yeah.
you're focused on what's happening right now and where you're going? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the air, so the fire and the fire is focused forward looking. So is the air. Earth is very focused more in the now and building a future. So water and earth are both more focused on memory, you know, clinging to memory. So now we're going to jump into the fun part. I think it's all fun, but our world really changed our perception of time starting with Einstein in 1905. So that was over 100 years ago. But when he came up with this awareness that time is relative, and then that was in 1905. He wrote 5 papers in 1905 that he published. Those were the major papers that he published in his whole life. He was 25 years old. In the 1920s, few years later, Niels Bohr in Denmark told the world that Newtonian physics is one thing, but there's this whole other world existing, and it's called the quantum world. Anybody know what quantum means? Energy bundle. An energy bundle. So Newtonian physics is based on atoms and molecules and how things move in relation on the bigger scale. Molecules are big. What makes up atoms? Quantum particles. So protons and neutrons and electrons are made up of quantum particles. So now we're going down in this really minute, very, very unpredictable aspect that underlies the foundation of our entire universe. And now, what is the difference between matter and energy?
Nothing.
E equals MC squared.
Yeah, now we're at E equals MC squared. That's not even the full formula, but that's what most people have been taught. But
Yes.
it says that when you take mass, and you speed it up to the speed of light squared, that's what C squared is, you have energy. Everything turns into energy. If you slow energy down, it turns into mass. So mass and energy are interchangeable. So that which you thought was solid is not solid. It's like, think about the chair you're sitting on right now. You think it's solid? It is not solid. There is more air there. But even if we thought about why we even go beyond the atoms and the molecules that make up the chair, we go down to the quantum level. You know, what are the forces that are making the neutron and the proton of the atoms that are making up the chair that you're sitting on? What makes them function together so that they allow you to appear to be able to sit on them? So anyway, it gets really strange. And quantum physics they cannot predict you cannot know where an object is in space, and at the same time know how fast it's traveling. It's unpredictable. You cannot know both things at the same time. So you cannot know all things on the quantum level. So now we're getting into probability and potential. What's the potential? So they say there's this concept that if I focus on something, once mind is applied to it, then it manifests itself as matter on the physical plane, right? Otherwise, everything in the universe is in a state of just total chaos. It's just a bunch of stuff just floating around. It's not even real. Does anything exist outside of your time cone? According to quantum physics, no. It's all in potential until you look at it. And when you look at it, the lamp turns into a lamp. The door turns into a door. Now, that's a whole nother subject. I'm not going to get off on that, even though that's really fun. So in 1940s, okay, so this is around World War II, nuclear physics comes along and realizes the concept of the nanosecond. This is one billionth of a second. So what have we done to time now?
Oh gosh.
Gosh, my gosh. And then what have we done with the physics? Man, we figured out how to blow up entire cities.
Hmm.
Nakashima, Hiroshima, one bomb. We can wipe out 100,000, 250,000 people died that afternoon. Right? So what is time? How did that experience, that awareness opened us up into a different awareness of what time is and matter? And then in 1975, the speed of light was established. Before that, we didn't really have that understanding. And they finally decided it was 186,000 miles per second. So it's what we call a constant. It's something that doesn't change. And we use those constants in mathematics and in physics. That's one of those standard things, right? Tell me a standard thing in your life it's something that you will not cross, something that you have decided this is a constant. This is part of who I am.
Do not touch a hot stove.
Very good. Somebody else?
Don't go to bed past a certain hour.
Okay.
That's a good one. I'll agree with that.
Okay. Somebody else? Nobody else has a constant?
Well, I guess mine is another one that I could have is I make sort of a drink in the morning and I put certain nutrients in it,
Okay.
fruits and vegetables, and I basically have done that every day for the past 2 years. I've only missed like maybe a couple of days. It's a real constant for me.
Right. And so why do you keep doing it?
Because it makes me feel good.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So constants are something that you choose to draw a line. It's something that you require of yourself. It's a discipline.
Yeah.
It's a discipline that you put in place.
Like a tapas, maybe.
Yeah. It's like when you quit smoking, you have to say, okay, I'm not going to smoke. From this point forward, I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to drink. From this day forward, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to binge eat. Right? I'm not going to. So anytime we set a boundary, that becomes a starting point, right? That's the ending of one cycle for us, isn't it? Think about when you started having periods. You think about your life as a female, you had time before you had periods, then you had time when you have a period, and then you're going to go through menopause where it becomes a little funky, and then it will disappear. And it's a cycle. Right? And that cycle tells you something about where you are in relationship to your age, right? How many of you look in the mirror and go, oh my God, in my mind, I remember how I looked when I was 25, and now I look in the mirror and I'm 70 and I'm like, wow, you have changed, right?
Who is that?
Does your inner picture change? Would you ever look in the mirror? I look in the mirror and I go, wow, it's so interesting to see how I am existing my body's existing on the physical plane. Because that's not how I feel. When I think about myself in my mind, that's not who I see. Right? When I go out to work in the garden or when I go to do yoga, I don't see that 70-year-old face. I'm not in that 70-year-old body until I try and do a move and I go, shit, can't do that one anymore. Right? And then it's like, oh yeah, there is this thing that's called linear time that you're involved in. And every single day you're getting a little bit older, and there is some ending to this process that no matter how well you think about things, you're gonna get to a point where the body will reach homeostasis and you'll be out of here. So,
Well, I'm only a year younger than my mother was when she died from lung cancer. And I just remember what she looked like.
yeah.
Then. She died at 69 and I'm 68. And I mean, I just thought she was so old.
Yeah.
I mean, she had a hard life and she made some poor choices as far as health went, but my mind doesn't feel, I mean, my body is, we've talked about I'm struggling with pain issues.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I don't feel old.
That's right. And when you meditate, when you really meditate, you don't have pain.
No,
the
I
body
don't.
only has pain when you're aware of the physical body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So the pain experts nowadays are starting to figure that out, which the yogis knew 5,000 years ago.
Right.
So they're finally catching up a little bit.
But it's retraining. So the pain for me, it's now retraining my mind to be pain-free. So it's resetting those neural pathways, figuring
Right,
out.
in the now, right?
Right.
In the now. You have, how are you redoing the reprogramming?
Okay, well, it's clear to me now that when I focus on things that make me angry, I have more pain.
Very good.
Yeah.
Why is
And more
that?
physical pain.
Why is that? What does anger do to the body?
Anger, I think, probably causes inflammation.
Yeah.
And
How about constriction of the muscles?
right. Constriction. Yeah. So your
Yeah.
body becomes tense.
It becomes tense. And if it becomes
Oxygen
tense,
getting to your muscles and connective tissue.
correct. Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I have to retrain my brain not to go into those patterns.
Right. And then eventually what will happen when the whatever it is within the physical body is the problem being caused because something's going on in the physical body that needs to release?
No, it's the mind that's causing it.
But you have some muscles that are
Right,
so
right.
tight they will not release.
Right.
So what has to release first?
Right. It's settled. This whole thing has settled in my physical body.
Right. But so where does the release have to happen first, in the mind or the body?
Well, I think you release it. I'm not sure. I'm still kind of struggling
It
with
has
that.
to happen, the release has to happen in the mind first.
First, okay.
And then the body will follow.
Yeah.
So if you have an old health issue that's been a long time, you have got to get back to the root of what caused the problem in the first place. And
Right.
you have to heal that. So how do we heal a mental attitude that is unhealthy? And we know it's unhealthy because it causes me pain.
Right. Say that again. Ask the question again. So how do we do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well, you do it through meditation, becoming aware.
Yeah, but not just how do you do it? How do you release? How do you change the mind through meditation?
You connect with that source, I think, inside of you that is pain-free, that is free of anger, that is free of worry, that is free of stress.
What do we call that part of you?
Well, it's your higher self. It's connecting with source energy, isn't it?
Well, it's called the self, the witness. Right. So the witness is not connected to the physical plane, right? But can manifest as consciousness, right? And can manifest as matter and energy. But it first manifests as the way we relate to it. The easiest way we can relate to the self, the divine essence within, is through the mind, right?
Right.
So if what I want to manifest, and I've shifted my mind over, and let's say I've got a bad hip, because I know 2 of you have a bad hip.
3, yeah. I have 2 bad hips.
You have 2 bad hips. Well, I know someone else who has a bad hip. But so when you're aware in your future, your past tells you I have a bad hip, right? And it's been going on for a long time, right? So when you are meditating, what kind of thoughts are you opening up to? Because if you keep thinking about the fact that you have a bad hip, and I want the hip to release, I want the muscles around it to release so I can have a healthy experience with it. Where does the mind have to be in order to produce that sense of release in your consciousness?
You have to be at peace. You have to be at ease with yourself, mentally and physically.
Right. So how do you get there? Where do you put your mind?
Well, when I'm there, it's when I'm in meditation.
Right. So where are you in meditation?
I'm single focused. I single
Oh,
focus.
you're beyond focus. Your mind is already
Yeah.
expanded. It's what we call superconscious.
Right. But when I'm meditating, maybe because I sit in a chair, maybe just sitting in a chair in a certain posture is better for me. I don't feel the pain when I'm sitting in meditation.
Right. But what is the difference between the conscious level of awareness and the superconscious experience? What is the difference?
Well, I know it in my mind, but I'm having a hard time getting it out in words.
That's okay, honey. I understand.
Yeah.
You're not aware of the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's superconscious and you're not aware of the body.
Yeah.
No.
So maybe that's why my body.
But what has happened to your mind? Your consciousness has expanded, right? So what's happened to the cone? The number of thoughts that are. Do you think you're single focusing on the pain when you go superconscious? No, you've gone into potentia.
Yeah.
Right? Can you imagine yourself without pain? Yes, because you do it when you meditate, right? You forget to remember. I have pain. I forget to remember I nearly died. I forgot to remember it. Therefore, what am I aware of? Being alive.
Well, even when I'm doing an activity that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
Like if I'm knitting or if I'm painting, I can go into that state too. I can totally, it's not like meditation, but it's a similar experience to where you.
Right, but it's more of an expanded and altered state.
Yeah, it's an altered state.
Right. So why does the body produce pain?
As a signal?
Huh?
As a signal?
A signal of what?
Yeah.
That something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Kind of an alarm.
Yes.
Right. And so we, most of the time when we're having physical pain, we think that physical pain is there because there's something physically wrong. But much of the time, the pain is there because of the problem that's going on in the mind. And the body is reflecting that imbalance or that wrong way of thinking through your physical body. And that's why when you forget to remember that you have a problem, you change your mind, you don't have pain.
Right.
So is pain real? On the physical level, it's real because it's trying to get your attention. But what it's really trying to do is get you to change your mind. How do you think I went? I was in a car accident. My arms were disabled. I couldn't even turn my spine. I couldn't turn my neck for 4 years. How do you think I got them to work again? Do you think I focused on the fact that I was 85% disabled from the waist up?
I think it's all about attaching and detaching yourself.
Right, but how do you think I looked at my arms that weren't working?
Did you remember how they were?
Before I ever had the accident.
Yeah.
I pulled up the memories of how I behaved before I got hurt. And what that did is it woke the memory up in the body brain. And that memory is deeper into my past than the accident. And so I activated that because I started putting that that non-painful experience. I focused on it, and layer by layer, that became my reality because that's the way I was focusing on it. Does that?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. But I guess I want to get more to the minutia of then how did you do that? So did you do that? Did you focus on your body?
I went back and started remembering things that I did, the yoga I could do before I ever got disabled.
Or the dancing that you
Or the
did?
dancing. And I would put on music, and I remember being a ballerina with Ballet West. That's what I focused on. And literally, it took me 4 years to get my arms back and working. But then I was right back teaching yoga again, right? But it's the pattern of remembering how you felt before you had the injury. Because that was when your body wasn't having a reaction to the pain. So your pain is related to your past.
Right.
It's related to your past experiences where there's been wrong thinking, or there was an actual physical accident that caused things for an actual damage to happen. But it may have begun just as muscles tightening up 10 years ago and pinching a nerve. And that it's been doing it for 10 years now. And so those muscles have never relaxed. And it seems no matter what I have anybody do to my physical body, I can't get it to release. But if I can bring the right thoughts down through my mind, those muscles will relax.
Okay, Melinda, I have a question, because I have some physical problems that came through at birth, and there's no yoga body for me to go back to that I remember.
Well, do you have a body where you didn't have pain in spite of those defects?
Yeah, but I was using a coping mechanism that screwed up other stuff.
Well, then all you can do is remember the best you can remember. Or what happens nowadays? Like the Olympic athletes, they sit and say they're going to ski. They sit and they close their eyes and they visualize themselves going down the path, right? There's where they're going to ski. So they visually are creating the image and the response in their mind, which is going to cause their body to have the response. And that's how they improve the way that they ski. That's how they do that. You can do exactly the same thing with what you have. So you don't focus on what the problem is. You focus on visualizing yourself going up and down the stairs without any problem. Playing tennis without any problem. Knees, being able to walk and carry things without it being a problem. That's what you visualize. And you actually begin to visualize that the muscles and your skeletal system moving as freely and beautifully, right? So when you do that, you are harmonizing the body brain and the mind, and they're different. The body brain is the solar plexus.
Right.
Right? And solar plexus reports to only the fissure of Rolando in the gray matter of the brain. That's the only place the brain records pain, is on this little tiny wrinkle in the brain. And if people could recognize there's so much more to life than the pain and the limitation that they set on themselves. But can you see
what part of the brain is that again? The fissure
of Rolando, Rolando.
So that's where the pain is registered?
Yes, for the entire body. It's the only place it's registered.
Interesting.
So if there's only one part of my brain that needs to shift, right? So it's not like I have to shift everything. I just need to get in the right space to shift things. Right? So the place to begin is with the mind. Right? And your mind is not limited by time, because time is unique to you in this very, very moment. I'm going to stop sharing. This very, very moment, that's what it is. You're living in your own little bubble, having your own little experience. So what are you going to do with it? Right? You have so much wonderful choice. You have so much choice, and the choices you make are going to make all the difference from this moment forward. And guess what? You have the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. That is the miracle of life, is that being, that existence. And when you tap in on the awe of that, you are in tune with the spiritual essence. That's the spirit that flows through us all, that we can walk, talk, breathe, do all these things that we do, create, have happiness, sadness, illness, health. They're all just a series of experiences. They aren't anything other than that. And we can stay attached to them, and we can drag the past into the future, right? And make the past part of what our future is. Or we can go so far into anxiety that we're so worried about what's going to happen, we don't really get to enjoy what's going on. So let me just remind you that there's only one place that you can be to have any effect on the way you are being alive, and that is in the now. I hope you enjoyed this today.
I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't miss
Yeah.
the first 30 minutes.
Well, it's recorded, and I'm going to publish it on Patreon, so you can
Oh, good.
have it. And I'm also going to publish the audio recorded it also, so we'll have the video, but we'll also have an audio recording, because sometimes you might want to listen to it in your car, or on your phone.
Yeah.
And then I've got the printouts, the things that I'll have those. I'll publish those also.
Oh,
So you'll
good.
have access to those.
Okay.
Good. Well, I hope you found it to be a little mind expanding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. I have so much fun doing this. This is my niche, man. I just didn't know how I was ever going to get to doing it on Zoom. I've been terrified of doing Zoom, and now it's like, I got this.
Oh, good.
Except for the very first part where we gotta get people unmuted, and so the technical part we're still learning. But
I love that painting behind you. It's so pretty.
oh yes,
I
guess what that's
know.
called. What do you think that's called?
Oh, like it reminds me of air,
Yeah,
like Aquarian
Time
air.
yeah, it is. It's a picture of humans. See, here,
Oh,
with time flowing through them.
oh, it's a time drawing. Whoa.
I painted that in 1992 or 3. So,
Yeah, right. It was right after I met you. I remember when you painted that.
yeah, and it was funny. I sold it, and then the lady who bought it, she moved to a smaller place, and she didn't have room for it, so she gave it back to me just a couple of months ago.
Oh, it's
It's
beautiful.
So I was like, okay, I'll take it
It's
back.
very timely.
Yes. Well, and for me, I look at it. I had it in my living room in Salt Lake, which is where I did a lot of teaching, and that's where I would have met Katie and Susan. So it's, to me, I look at it and go, wow, I'm back in the house on Wilson, in between 10th and 11th South. And I look at it.
Wow.
So, and I was still busy painting, and I was teaching. I was involved with the same things that I'm involved with now, except my Colin and Yarrow were in high school, and Jai wasn't even conceived yet. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And then you think, well, time passed, and yeah. And now I'm in Pocatello, Idaho, and Jai's graduating from the University of Physics in next month, the end of next month.
Yay.
So,
Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, and you look at it and think, wow, what a journey this has been. And one of the reasons, because he's into quantum physics, and it's what he's getting his degree in physics, is we have the most wonderful conversations. In fact, I read him my notes, to make sure that everything was okay before I talked to you guys about it. So about well, actually, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning a couple of days ago. We were both up. So we had a conversation. I read him everything and make sure that it was okay, with what he knows as a physicist. So I don't want to be giving out wrong information.
That's awesome. Yeah, you have your own expert.
I do. I have my own physicist here that I get to run this by. Well, we started when he was in 8th grade. We used to read every night together from the time he was a little boy. But I was like, we need something really cool that we can really enjoy. And so I got this book on Fred Alan Wolf about time, about quantum physics. And it's written for lay people. And so that's what we used to read. So he's been studying quantum physics for a long time.
Wow.
This wasn't foreign to him. And now he's so far past me. He's learned how to do all the mathematics and stuff. And I'm not the mathematician he is, but it's just neat how it all, comes together so beautifully. All right, lovely ladies. Thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
A few things to think about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All righty.
Take care, everyone.
Sure love you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Time.
Bye.